Hello, ladies. Let me check who we've got in here. Okay, we'll just wait for some people to jump on. I think I've got everything working here. Let me shift this back up here. Great. Hello, I've got some people online. I hope you're all having a great morning. I'm just going to give a couple of minutes for a few other people to jump on live. Hey, Jess. Awesome to see you. So I'm going to be sharing my screen very shortly. And I'm not actually sure if the chat function comes up in Zoom. So what I'm going to do is pop back in and check the chat function. So just put your questions into the chat function as they come up, and I will answer them as we go along, or kind of in chunks. We'll see how that works out for us. Hopefully the light is okay in here. Can you guys hear me okay? And is the video good? Can I get a thumbs up? No emojis, yes and yes. Fabulous. All right. Well, we might jump in and get started. So I'm just going to share my screen with you so that you can see the, I've got some slides that we'll be following along with, but I'm super excited to have you all here today. This is my first group webinar. So technology, non-expert, just, you know, flagging that out for you right now. But I'm very excited about taking you through my 5 steps for conflicted to confident. This is very much rooted in the journey that I've been on as a mum, and in my career and in my small business over the last sort of 4 or 5 years. And honestly, it's been so transformational for me. So I hope that there are some tips in here for you today that can make a difference to where you're at. So we'll jump in and get started. I want to be sharing that one there. And there we go. And I want to make you go away. Good. Right, here we go. All right, so let's get started. I have notes over on this other computer here because I had a little, well, I wasn't able to print them out, so it is what it is. But welcome, let's get moving. As you jump on, ladies, please say hi so that we know that you're there, and we will, oh good, there's a little message coming up at the top. Hey Nikki, how you going? All right, so let's get started. The replay, make sure you comment if you are catching the replay. I can't figure out how to share this into Facebook right now, so I'm going to pop that in the recording into the group later for those of you who are in my tribe. And if you're not, make sure you jump in, because honestly, such an amazing vibe in there. The ladies have been amazing. It's all about being honest with yourself, this process, and you don't have to tell anybody else the things that you're admitting, but you do have to learn to be honest with yourself. So take some notes and really take some time after the webinar to dig deep and really think about what some of these processes bring up for you, because you might be surprised. And I know I certainly was when I really got into what's important to me and what was driving me. So a little bit about me. This is my beautiful family. I can't believe how much my girls have grown even since when this photo was taken last year. Even in writing and preparing this webinar, I had a bunch of learnings about myself. And so I sat down to, you know, what am I going to tell the ladies about myself? And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm a 40-something mum. I'm a career woman. I have a successful small business. And, you know, I'm a business coach. I thought about the hobbies that I have, and I realized how often it is that we define ourselves by the roles that we live in life. And I thought, okay, well, if I'm going to be honest with you guys about how to go about doing this and really stepping into your confidence, then how would I really describe myself if I wasn't thinking about those roles? And, you know, I want you to think about how it makes you feel to hear me say these things, because there was a time where I would have been uncomfortable listening to someone describe themselves like this. And even that is a really telling thing. So if I was to say I'm a really passionate person, I'm really caring, I care about the people in my life, I care about my clients, and I care about what's happening to them. I'm empathetic. I am very driven. I like to move forward. I like to achieve. I like to learn and grow. I'm motivated by the potential of the future. I get really excited about what can happen and what the future can look like. I'm fun. I'm loving. I'm definitely slightly insane, but I think that's okay too. What about some of the words that it's not okay to say? So I'm smart. I'm very good at what I do. I connect really well with my clients, and I'm great at problem solving and finding solutions to the things that they're working through. I'm a really good coach. I am a great listener. I inspire people. Does it make you feel uncomfortable to hear me describing myself like that? And do you judge me a little bit? It's okay for you to say yes, because it was actually quite a learning for myself, even in typing it out, that I very rarely describe myself like that. But actually they're things that I'm good at. And that's part of what owning your confidence is all about, is being able to say that and say those things about yourself. So it's okay to tell people the stuff that you're really good at. But this is my beautiful family. My youngest there, she was about 8 months there. She's now 16 months old and walking and talking and generally creating havoc. I absolutely love my girls and my husband. My family are my world. But I am also a professional person, and I love being a professional person. I love my career. I love adding value to people. And so I thought I would tell you a little bit about why I'm even qualified to talk to you today. So scarily, I have 20 years experience, both in small business and in big corporates. And I've spent the last 10, well, actually a little bit more than that now, consulting to big corporates. And I say on my LinkedIn profile that I'm a business transformation specialist, and that's what I focus on. I help businesses get better outcomes, be more efficient, achieve the things in their strategy, overcome their challenges through their people. So I'm all about, how do you bring your employees on the journey? How do you engage people? How do you help them realise the part that they're playing in what the organisation is trying to achieve? And I absolutely love that. So for those who are in the corporate world, that's pretty much change management. It's business transformation. I do a lot of coaching with leaders, as well as with my colleagues and team members. Coaching is a really big part of what we do at the organisation that I work for, and it's something that we take really seriously, and it's hands down the part that I love most about my job and what I do. That and really meaty challenges. I love a good challenge. So that's me. I focus on what people, what motivates them and how to kind of bring that to life for them. And in my personal life, so my eldest is 4.5 now, and it took us a long time to fall pregnant. And so when I went into being a first-time mum, I kind of fell apart a bit, really. It was a very anxious time. I had lots of expectations around what being a mum was going to be like. I was an incredibly structured human back then. And for those of you who have children, you would know and probably laugh, hopefully with me and not at me, about how it's pretty much impossible to keep a plan in place when you have a baby. And so that was a big realization for me. I had to really shift how I thought about things, and that was quite a challenge. And I was really happy to go back to work, and all of the avalanche of guilt that comes with that, of, I can't believe I'm happy to be back at work right now. My 7-month-old is in daycare. You know, I should be with her. All the shoulds come out, all of the things I should be doing as a mum. I should be fulfilled enough by being a stay-at-home mum. I adore being with my children, but I also get a lot of fulfillment out of the work that I do. And so there was this big adjustment that I and everybody who returns to work had to go through. And for me, that looked like figuring out what success looked like for me. I couldn't be the director that I used to be and be the mum that I wanted to be. I was part-time. So how did I maintain those boundaries in a really busy corporate environment where I felt like the expectation was that you did more? You know, I hope you've all got your cup of tea. I've got my cup of tea. I hope you don't mind if I drink it while we're going. But what I found through that was that I set the boundaries. And so if I relaxed my boundaries, then the people around me would be very grateful for that and say, yes, that's fantastic. We will take advantage of that. But if I didn't relax my boundaries, they were also really fine. And that was a massive realization for me. And I think we go in with this expectation that people won't let us enforce our boundaries. And so we kind of relax them naturally because we're worried about what people think. And so that was the start of me figuring out what life looked like. And I got to a place where I was really comfortable with the choices I was making in my career. At that time, I had a small business. I was in partnership with a friend and we were kind of dabbling, but what I know now is pretty much making all the mistakes that you make when you start a small business. So I can honestly say that I've made those mistakes that I'm working with my clients around avoiding. And so that wasn't really a big part of what was going on for me. And then when I had Bubby number 2, a lot had happened at work. And so I went into that pregnancy, honestly, in a pretty anxious state, I think it's fair to say. And a lot happened. My husband injured himself when Eliana was 2 days old, and he ended up in surgery when she was 2 weeks old. It was a shoulder injury, so his arm was in a sling. And so, again, I'd gone into it, it's going to be better this time. I'm not going to have the problems. I struggled with breastfeeding with both of my girls, and that was one of the things that for me was a massive you should be able to do this as a mum, and I so passionately wanted to do that, and when it didn't work, that just broke me. And so I ended up with postnatal depression after Eliana when she was it got probably really bad when she was about between 9 and 12 weeks old, and I got the help that I needed working with my doctor. But what I realized through that process is that I was the center of the family. I hadn't realized how connected to me and my emotions and my mental state my girls and my husband were. And so when I wasn't having a good day, the whole family didn't have a good day. And that was a bit of an aha moment for me, because as women, we take on these pressures, especially as people who have a career that's important to us or a business that's important to us, or both of those things, as well as our family. And so it's really hard to stay in a state of confidence and knowing yourself, and because you're constantly redefining and reliving different situations and taking on all these expectations and roles in life. And so I had to work through, again, not from scratch, because I had some foundations from the stuff that I had to do going back to work with Micah, but I really had to dig a lot deeper to figure out what was super important to me. And then I realized what I was doing, and I got deliberate about it. And that's what I'm sharing with you today. So that's kind of my story. And that realization around the impact that mum and how she's going has on the family is actually the foundation of the iteration of my business as it is today, because I'm so incredibly passionate about working with professional mums and helping them build the businesses that are right for their family at that time. But if I can help them be more confident and more sure, then I can have an impact for their families. And that for me is an amazing privilege to be able to do that. So let me make sure I'm on the right screen. So what's important anyway? Moving from conflicted to confident is about finding your inner journey, your inner confidence. It's about knowing what really drives you. Do you know what drives you? Do you know what's holding yourself back from taking an extra step or moving in a different direction? Do you understand the things within you, those resistance forces that are stopping you from doing that? Because we all have them. And this is not a process that you will go through and be done with. It's a tool, it's a set of tools that you'll come back to whenever different things happen to you in life. And so what I want to do is help you get that momentum and help you figure out how you're moving forward. It takes a lot of courage to face up to some of these questions. So even just the fact that you're thinking about these things for yourself, give yourself a pat on the back, because not everybody has the courage to dig deep and really look at what is impactful for them and the different decisions they need to make in life. And sometimes it takes courage to make a decision to just do something to a good enough standard, because that's where you're at and that's what's important to you. And you know that thing has to get done, but it doesn't have to be gold standard either. And so that's what I'm talking about, ditching the guilt and that sense of overwhelm because of all the things that we have in life, all the expectations that others put on us, and actually figuring out what those expectations are for ourselves and what we're comfortable with, and making conscious choices. All right. So this is my process, conflicted to confident. These are the 5 steps that I use all the time. I've talked about the 2 times in my working life when I've gotten really deliberate about them, but now they're habitual, and I naturally go back through these and sense check myself. And I can't tell you how freeing that is. I can't believe how I'm feeling now as a woman in my business and in my career, and my, sorry, I keep flicking my head. I've got like this bit of fringe, which is driving me crazy. What was I saying? Yes, I can't believe how amazing it feels to own the decisions that I'm making about what I will and won't do without feeling guilt about the expectations of others. And so, I have learned to live with and be comfortable with ambiguity. You will probably hear me talk about control quite a bit, because that's something that is significant for me. I mentioned that I like structure. And obviously, as a mum of 2 small energetic humans, you can't have structure in the same way, but I do need to feel like there are elements of my life that I can control, and this process helped me get that back. So whilst I'm way more comfortable with ambiguity now, this does give me that little bit of structure. You'll see me looking sideways. I've got my notes just over here. I just want to make sure I don't miss any of the key points I wanted to make for you. So when I say control, it means that it gives me control of what I commit to. It gives me a reason for saying no when I choose not to do something. It gives me a way to explain that decision to the person I'm talking to. But interestingly, I also don't feel like I need to explain myself to feel okay about the decision that I'm making. And that's a really important shift as well. I make my decisions with my husband, and we're on the same page because of this first step around connecting to your why and your vision. And to be able to figure out the root of things that are bothering me, and to sort of go back, the sun's really come out behind me there. I follow this all the time. So there are arrows on the end of that red line for a reason, because you will use these things all the time. So let's dive in. Connection. This is about your why. And lots of people these days talk about understanding your why. And I think it's easy to go, yeah. Simon Sinek talked about it, and we've heard the video, and we've seen the I've forgotten the name of the platform, TEDx. We've seen the TEDx talks, and every man and his dog who is an entrepreneur will talk about your why and why that's important. That's because it is actually important. And what I'm talking about in this particular process is that it's about your reason. It's about digging deep and figuring out what it is that drives you forward. What is the difference that you want to make? What is the impact that you want to have? This is about having a dream for where you want to get to, for knowing that, but not just about your business success. So you need to know what that is for your family, because ultimately we are all doing this as part of our lives and our families. And it's not just about, you can't separate those two things. And I think that's partly where we come unstuck, because we don't link them together. And actually, I believe that you should start with the life dream, not the career dream or the business dream, because career and business are just ways that you're going to enable that life dream to happen. So that's what this is about. Understanding what you love to do and why that is. I love to coach, and I think the reason I'm so passionate about my business now is because the things that I went through after having Eliana and what I talked about in terms of working with professional mums, that's the impact that I want to have. And everything else has become easy when I've figured out who that ideal person is that I want to work with and help. So it's important, because when you really connect to what is driving you and what is important to you, it becomes so easy to make decisions, because you're being true to yourself and your core values. You're making decisions about what you want to get involved in and do that relate to where you want to get to. And I think it's really important to start paying attention. So there will be people in your lives who have balance, and you probably admire them, you probably have respect for them. Pay attention, because you will notice that balance that we crave is usually that person being really deliberate about what they do and what they get involved in. And when that person finds themselves in a situation of stress or tension and it's a bit out of control for them, it's usually because something has come into their sphere which isn't something that they've been able to make a deliberate decision about. And that's okay. That always happens. But you need to then have the tools to be able to deal with that situation and move yourself forward and out of it, rather than being, and I use this word lightly, but a victim of the situation. And then the final thing about why it's important to do this step and really connect is that once you really understand what you want and you connect the goals that you set to that, it's unbelievable what you're prepared to persevere through to achieve that goal, because you can see why you're doing it. And so when it gets a bit tough and when that internal resistance starts to play out, you've got a reason for why you're going to persevere. It takes discomfort to push through. And for those who haven't read my recent article around resistance, it's actually a thing. Your brain is hardwired to stop you from being in situations which are uncomfortable. And that actually really sucks. I can't believe that our brains are hardwired in that way. And so it naturally makes you procrastinate or do things but not the thing that really needs to be done to progress you towards your goal. There's a whole bunch of ways that resistance shows up for you. But if you know your why and if you're really connected to where you want to get to, it's a lot easier to push through that resistance. Hopefully that makes sense, but do ask questions. It gives me a little highlight down here if you've got any questions as we go. So then how do we do this? I start with a visioning session. So for me, I'm a journaler. When I'm trying to figure something out, I like to sit with a cup of tea and write things out because that forces my mind to focus on what I'm doing as opposed to wander randomly, which it is want to do. So you can do it alone, or you can do it with your partner or another person who is significant in your life. I did it alone, and then I went and talked it through with Jeff, and we worked out what that looked like for us as a family. But it is important to make sure you do some of that reflection by yourself, because you're the person who is in control of the decisions that you make, even though you're discussing them with people who are important to you. So get deep. What do you want life to look like? Where are you living? Let's get down to brass tacks. Let's, how do you want to be living? How are you spending your time? What does a typical day in that ideal life look like? How much are you working? Where are you working? What type of work? And so I have, in my ideal day, we are living on a little bit of land in the foot of the Dandenongs. We have a beautiful home. Our girls go to school nearby. Jeff and I are both working from home, so we're able to spend quality time with our girls before and after school. We only work during school hours. I know what my kitchen looks like. I know what I can taste and feel that ideal world that we're working towards, and it's not that hard to achieve. And I think what was really powerful for us is that you can actually start designing that too. So once we kind of went, yeah, that's what we really want. We want to be close to family. All our family is in Victoria. We were living in Queensland in a beautiful home and had been there for 17 years. We had a great network of friends, but not a lot of family up there. My mum was back down here. Jeff's one of a very large family. There's lots of grandkids down here. And so we started making decisions about moving ourselves towards that ideal life, and we moved. We sold our house. There was nothing easy about that process. I still had postnatal when we were going through that, and so yeah, it was super challenging, but we were able to get through that because of the connection to why we were doing it. And we made decisions like we haven't bought a home straight away in Victoria because we're able to live debt-free for a little while. And that means Jeff can be at home with the girls, which has made our transition so much easier. And so you can see how it starts to inform the decisions that you're making and the choices that you're making. And we are so happy right now. Life is great. I work from home a couple of days a week, so I get to spend time with my girls. And then I really enjoy going into the city a couple of days too. It's a good balance for us and where we're at right now. So think about what your ideal life looks like. Do a visioning session with yourself and really dig into that. And dig into your why. And the easiest way I can describe this to you, and yes, I'm a consultant, I own it, is use the 5 whys. Again, I did this by journaling, and I wrote down what I thought my why was, and I just kept getting deeper and deeper. And be brave enough to be really honest with yourself about this. It's super important. It's easy to default to a business why or a career why and what you think that is about. But what you really need to do is get to what are those core needs in you that are influencing you. That's so important, because until you realize what that is, you're likely to continue having negative feelings about the things that are happening to you. So you can't take control of it until you really understand what the need is within yourself that you're fulfilling. It's not about your business and it's not about your career. I can't be strong enough in emphasizing that. So my why is about being able to design our future life and creating that flexibility to do that. And it might change by the time we get there, but we're able to make decisions along the way. And it's about making an impact for the people that I'm working with. So I know even in my corporate career, unless I'm making an impact with the client that I'm working with, I'm probably not going to feel fulfilled, because that is a real need for me. Whereas others, it might be about efficiency or getting different financial outcomes for them or whatever. My core need is about making an impact. So I hope that makes sense. I think that's my main points that I wanted to make on this slide for you. But again, if you do have any questions, make sure that you sing out. So the next one is about balance. One of the things, this is a process that I started doing when I went back to work after having Micah, my first. And I first went through the process with a return to work coach, and it was so powerful for me. At that time, there were a couple of relationships family relationships, which were challenging for a couple of reasons, as well as working through the expectations which I thought came with going back to work as a director. So not just the client delivery, but the extra stuff that comes with it, and my expectations on myself as a mum. And so this is all about that elusive concept of balance, which looks completely different for everyone, and how on earth do you achieve it? And so this and the next step to find do both kind of work interchangeably on this, but it starts with managing what you're trying to fit in and making informed choices about that. So when I talk about balance, I'm talking about being aware of all of those roles that you are taking on in every aspect of your life. And you do it without even realizing it, and you take on the expectations of others and create that as an expectation for yourself. And that is the recipe for overwhelm. It's completely overwhelming to add in every little thing that we think that is expected of us in those roles. And so what you need to do is think about what your non-negotiables are. What are the things that are absolutely important to you and are not something you're prepared to flex on, and what you're going to start saying no to. So let's get away from that recipe for constant guilt, the feeling of never being on top or never quite being enough, or never really feeling satisfied, and acknowledging where you need to put more effort into. What was really important for me was I realized I wasn't putting enough effort into my relationship with my husband. And I also gave myself permission to say, actually, I'm a great mum. I'm really happy with how I'm showing up as a mum. So maybe I could stop giving myself a hard time and stop feeling guilty about how I'm doing that, because I don't actually want to change anything about the relationship that I have with my girls and how I'm looking out for them. But I do want to put more effort into hubby. So those are the sorts of things that start to come out. So in terms of the process, and this one is a bit of a process. If you have downloaded my mindset checklist, this is actually the process that one walks you through. So it's a really, you just sit down and kind of go through this. Again, you'll see I'm a structured human and I respond really well to that. So the first thing you do is you sit down and write out all of the roles that you're trying to fill in life. So for me, I was a mum, I was a wife, I was a sister, I was a daughter, I was a director, I was trying to be a coach for people within my teams, I was a friend, I had a bunch of other things that I had taken on at the time. You might be a little league coach, you might be volunteering, you might be running the tuck shop one day a week, or doing a reading group, or you might be part of a reading group or a social group, or you can start to see, like, we have all of these things. So try and figure out what all of those roles are. What are all of the things that you're trying to fit into your life? And then you sit down and be honest with yourself about how much effort you're putting into those and why. I actually, and the way I talk about it in the checklist is I just rated myself out of 10. I went through and went, okay, well, how do I think I'm really going on those? And in some of them, friend, for example, I'm like, do you know what? I'm like 50-50. I'm a 5. But as a mum, I'm an 8. It feels a little bit weird to assign a number, but that was the only way I could kind of force myself to work through it. And so I went through and did that. And then the next bit was the bit that was important, because then I went, okay, well, how do I want to be performing in those areas? How much effort do I want to be putting in? How do I want to be showing up? And that's where the aha moments came in, because that's where I went, yeah, actually, I'm a great mum. So let's stop feeling guilty about that and just keep doing what I'm doing in that space. I want to put more effort into my relationship with hubby. I'm okay with being a 5 as a friend at the moment. Actually, I've got a baby and I don't have a lot of time and I work. So the friends that are really, really close and important, that amount of effort is going to keep us close anyway. And so I started making these decisions, and then I made decisions about what I wasn't going to do. And some of the things that went were things that were in my corporate role. And I said, do you know what? I'm really sorry. I would love to be involved with that, but I can't right now because I don't have headspace, I don't have energy, and I don't have time for it. I need to be focusing on these other things. And those conversations were really, really easy to have because I had a reason for why I was having them. And people don't question that. People don't mind if you say no to stuff. They mind if you say yes and then don't deliver. And so think about that. And so that was really, you know, I go through this regularly. So write out your roles, rate them, assess them, prioritize, and make adjustments. That's what this is all about in terms of finding your balance, because you're making conscious choices about the things that you get involved in. So I hope that makes sense. Do ask questions. I've noticed that it's 10:35, so I'm going to move myself along a little bit. The next one is about defining success. So you've got to define what success looks like for you right now, and that changes all the time. It means redefining it when you have kids or move states or change jobs or take on a new client or, I don't know, maybe you injure yourself. Maybe you have a broken arm. You have to redefine what you can achieve and what success looks like while you're healing. You know, every little thing that happens or a child gets sick, you might be redefining for yourself what that looks like. Give yourself a break when stuff changes in life. That's what this one is about. Be honest with yourself about your why and define what success looks and feels like for you in relation to your why in that role. And I do this on the fly. I kind of go, okay, how do I feel when I feel successful? Is that me measuring myself against an old yardstick or someone or my yardstick for right now? You're never going to feel successful if you measure yourself against someone else's success. Stop comparing yourself to other people. You are amazing. And I guarantee you that there are people who are comparing themselves to you. So that sense of inadequacy that we wear like a little coat, it's really not necessary, because there are other people looking to you trying to figure out how to get where you are or how to do what you do in whatever area of life. And that also plays into the decisions piece as well. I can make tough decisions more easily because I know what success does and doesn't feel like. And so while if I'm talking about taking on a client that isn't a good fit for me, I might feel more successful because there's more revenue coming in, but I'm not really going to enjoy that process because I know that we're not a good fit for each other. And so making those sorts of decisions, not just about what you get involved in, but also, you know, who you work with. It might be about friends, for example. It's okay to, this is a little bit controversial, but it's okay to let a friendship just kind of simmer down a little bit. Because what success looks like for me in my friendships is that I have genuine interactions with those people. And when we come back together, whenever we come back together, it's easy. And so that's a decision that I've made. And what that means is that the circle of people that I interact with on a regular basis is smaller, but way more genuine. And so that will be different for you. I'm an introvert, and so I get my energy from myself or from small groups, and that works really well for me. You might be someone who really, really gets a lot out of large social groups, and so you have to make those decisions based on how that works for you as well. But it's about conscious decisions, and you'll notice that I've said that quite a bit as well. That is really what this is all about. So figuring it out, what it means for you. This is, again, how you do this is reflection. So think about a time when you felt really successful. What did that feel like for you? Do you feel accomplished? Did you feel free, happy? Some of the other words that I've written down here are relieved, confident, valued, energized, motivated. Success feels different for different people, but it's important to understand what that is for you. You will likely also find that it's different depending on which areas of your life. So success feels different for me as a director in consulting than it does as a mum, and or in my business, or as a wife, or as a sister-in-law. You know, I feel really successful as a family member when I'm able to bring people together. As I mentioned, there's quite a lot of them, and that's a big thing to do, but I love entertaining as long as I don't do it too often. And so I know what that feels like and what I look for, and I no longer try to meet the expectations of others in the family, because I know that they value me for what I bring. And so coming to that realization about yourself is really important. Think about the roles that are important to you, and what success feels like in relation to those. So the step that we've just done around balance, where you've said, okay, these are the ones that are really important to me. Well, then how do you feel if you've got 3 things that are your number one priority for right now, then what does success feel like? Define that for yourself so that you can say, yep, those are my priority, and then these are the things that I need to be doing in that space, and therefore I can or can't get involved in these other things or do those things. And you can see this whole process is about your headspace and getting in control of that. You might be surprised at what happens when you let go of some of the things that aren't really that important to you. It's an amazingly light feeling to not have to do that thing anymore. So test it. Pick something small. It's hard to get used to doing this, but just go, do you know what? I'm really sorry, but I can't do that anymore. You may or may not choose to explain why that is. I generally would. And that person will probably say, okay, really, like, thank you for being honest with me. You may need to help find a solution for that, but you don't have to. It's not your problem. You have to manage your life. Obviously, you don't want to be letting people down, though. I would typically help find a solution, particularly if it's something I've committed to doing and I'm going to be leaving them in a bit of a lurch. Then we work together to find something that works. But everybody's different around that. Some things are more important in your mind than they are in reality. Remember that. So the little things that you are letting go of actually probably aren't a big thing for other people. It's also okay to, so I mentioned there were some family relationships which we were going through some stuff when I first did this. And I was feeling an immense amount of guilt about this particular relationship. It was a person who was close to me in my family. But we had an issue that was unresolved and I was really struggling interacting with them. And so I made the decision that just for the time being, I can't put any more effort into that relationship. That doesn't mean I stopped interacting, but I did stop feeling guilty about not doing more, because actually what we needed was time. And so after actually quite a small amount of time, we were able to both have moved on a little bit and stop putting this false pressure on ourselves. And we had the conversation that we needed to have, and now we have that closeness again. But it was, from my perspective, so freeing to be able to go, it's okay for me just to do this amount with that relationship right now. And that's the right thing for us. And that turned out to be absolutely the best thing in the long run. So I think that's probably the main points that I wanted to make there. There might be some tough conversations as you're going through this process. That's okay too. But make sure you've got support around you, whether that's a friend or your partner or a coach, someone independent. Make sure you've got the support around you to help you get through making the changes in your life. You don't have to do it alone. There will be people who understand and can work with you through that, and that's really important as well. You don't have to take all of that strength and responsibility on yourself. And I've already talked about this actually, and this is that point around maintaining a relationship with someone who is really not aligned to your values or the things that are important to you. It's not about cutting ties. Sometimes it's about putting that down for a bit. And you may have heard the story, people come into our lives for a season often. Sometimes they come in and they're meant to be part of our lives for a long time. And sometimes you're meant to be part of someone's life for a period of time. And whether it depends on what your belief system is. I'm a Christian, and so from a faith perspective, I believe that we are brought together to help each other in times of need or trial. You might have faith in, the universe and the belief that destiny brings people together. Whatever your belief system is, sometimes that relationship's not meant to last forever. And so it's okay to let go of it once you've helped each other through whatever that period might have been. And sometimes we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to maintain those relationships because we think once we get close to somebody, they need to always be in our lives. But don't put that pressure on you or the relationship. It will not survive it. And so have the confidence, I think, to kind of let that go. Okay, believe. Let's move on. This one is about believing in yourself and what you bring. Actually, it's about turning around limiting beliefs. So what are those stories that you're telling yourself about what is and isn't possible and what you can and cannot do? They are about self-talk. They're about the subconscious, and your subconscious comes into play here. You are believing things about yourself and your capability and the value that you bring right now that are holding you back. And so let me give you some examples, and I'm going to read from the list here so that I can remember them. Things like, I don't know, in my business, I don't know how to market myself. Who would pay for my services? I don't tell people anything that they don't already know. I can't build a successful business. I don't really think that achieving your dreams is possible. You have to work in a job to get by. Children raised by a stay-at-home mum are better off. All of these, you can start to see how there might be things that are playing away in your subconscious, impacting on your self-belief. And this all has a massive impact. And so learning how to turn those things around is incredibly powerful. So I'm just going to jump straight into the process on this one because there's a bit to it. And what I'm going to do is work up some worksheets. Actually, I'm a bit excited about a boot camp that's coming up, so I won't get ahead of myself. I'll tell you about that at the end of the webinar. So I first learned how to do this from a lady by the name of Stephanie McKenzie. And she's in a business called Sincerely Stephanie Melissa. She is an amazing coach. She's strategically minded and she's creative. So if you like to follow different people, obviously I want you to keep following me, but I do recommend you check her out. She is actually amazing. And so I've adapted the process that I follow from her teachings around limiting beliefs. And so when I think about limiting beliefs, there are 4 steps that I use to kind of go through this. So the first thing is you need to identify what your limiting thoughts are. And that is much easier said than done because they can really be bedded really deep. And so the way that I start it, and it's like anything, once you practice it, you get better at doing it. And so the way that I start is to think about areas that you're struggling with. I did this in relation to my business, and then I did it in relation to being a mum. That's just how my mind works. You might like to chuck it all in together. It depends on how you think and how you work. So think about things like, what have you tried to do more than once and you never seem to master? What are the things that you think other people can do better than you can? What skills do you think you're lacking to succeed? What weaknesses do you have that you don't like other people to see? Something that makes you feel really vulnerable. What character traits do you beat yourself up about? And you go through these questions and just answer them. Just write down. Be really honest with yourself, or be as honest with yourself as you can. And then go through them and find the ones that sting a bit when you write them down. Deep down inside, you know they're the ones that are holding you back. And you don't like admitting them, and you don't like telling other people about them, and you try to pretend they're not actually there. Write those down as an I can't statement. So the questions that I said before, let me give you an example. One of my I can't statements was, I can't build the right following on social media to make my online business work. That was a massive limiting belief for me because it was an unknown. It's been a skill that I've had to learn. And so that's an example of what an I can't statement might look like. It might be, I can't think of something as a mum. I can't provide a healthy diet for my kids all the time, or I can't spend time with my children in creative play, or you can start to see the sorts of things that might be creating that guilt and negative self-talk in the back of your mind. And so then take it a few levels deep. So I can't do that thing because. So for me, if I use the social media example, my statement turned into, I can't create a good following in social media to be successful in online marketing because I don't know how to market properly. And then when I went a bit deeper, it was because I don't think people will want to follow me. And I started to get down into the depth of what actually was holding me back, which was that rooted in that belief of, well, why would people want to listen to what I have to say anyway? And so once you've done that, you want to get to the root of what that fear is or what that thing is that's holding you back. And then you flip them. So turn it into a success statement. Which parts of that limiting belief statement that you've gotten to are true? Be really honest with yourself. So in my statement, the part that was true was my lack of knowledge around how to go about social marketing. That was a fact statement. And so I wrote that down. That was a skill gap. I can solve for that. I know how to fix that. I can go and learn, and I can, for me, I engaged a business coach, and she helped me around my brand and my message and how I'm talking to people and what that strategy looked like, as well as helping me work through some of my other areas of where I needed to grow. And then sometimes it's a belief that is holding you back from resolving the issue. Sometimes it's just a load of baloney. So actually go through that limiting statement and pick the bits which are true. And you're going to end up with a list of actions and a list of success statements. So rewrite that limiting belief statement into a success statement and turn it around. And I write them out as affirmations. So I believe that affirmations are really powerful. And the reason that I know that is in my career, my confidence in myself and my skill set in my career now is absolute. And I don't say that to be arrogant. It just is. And I think that's partly down to affirmations, because the sorts of things that I used to say to myself is, as part of my daily affirmations, is I add value to my clients. My clients value the feedback that I provide. I help them move forward on their problems. I'm a good critical thinker. And now I naturally just think those things about my skill set, and I love what I do. And my clients have responded really well to my shift in mindset about that. And so that's an example of when those affirmations that you say daily turn into reality, because you really start to rewire the way that you think about yourself and take particularly the load of baloney parts of your limiting beliefs and kick them out the window and actually start to own your success and your expertise. So, again, there's a lot in there. There's a lot in this process, but I'm trying to hopefully give you some nuggets of things that you can be doing. So, finally, when we get to the owner part, this is about absolutely owning your awesomeness and your uniqueness. You are a unique human, and there are so many things about you that make you wonderful and make the value that you bring amazing. And it's okay to give yourself permission to own those things and to talk about them for others. So this is about embracing your strengths, your skills, the things that you have a natural affinity for, your experience. An example of this is when I first started my consulting career, I had a decade of experience, but I felt like I'd just started fresh. And it took me a couple of years to realize that the stuff that I had done before I started consulting actually counted for something. It wasn't until I was in a meeting with someone, and I can't actually remember exactly what it was we were talking about now, but it was something to do with logistics. And I said, okay, well, with my previous company, this was the process that we went through, and these were some of the challenges that we saw, and this was how we implemented change in our warehousing process and what we were doing there. And I had this massive aha moment around, oh wow, actually that first 10 years of my career was useful, and I should probably own the experience that I got through that, and the learnings that I have, because that's learnings that other people might not have, and it's valuable. So don't discount the things that you've done, because they will be valuable to other people. I've talked about the uniqueness. This is about giving yourself permission to make those statements. Remember right back at the start when I asked you, did it make you feel uncomfortable to hear me talking about myself that way? Give yourself permission. And I don't do that very often, just to be honest and clear about it. I'm not saying go out and, tout yourself, but it's okay to talk about yourself to yourself in your mind, because that's what builds your confidence, and you know what you're talking about, and you know the value that you bring. So that's what this is about. Your affirmations becoming second nature, and truly believing yourself and believing in yourself in those different areas of your life that we've talked about today. That's when you really start to step into what I call owning your expertise, stepping into your confidence, and it's stopping apologizing for yourself or doubting yourself and apologizing for yourself less, because most of us, it's really hard to just stop doing that. It's kind of how we're raised. Some of this is going against societal norms, and that's pretty challenging too. And you will get resistance from people in your life as you go through this process. But the ones that really love you will be so incredibly proud of you. And for me, that's actually lovely as well. So I love that my mum and dad are really proud of who I am right now, and where I've come to, because they also know what I've been through. So it's okay for you to want that as well. You've heard me say it's okay a lot. I hope that that's one of the things that you're writing down, because it is actually okay to do this stuff for yourself and to believe in yourself and to be confident. And it's okay to dream and move towards that dream. So give yourself permission to do that. So why is this important? Because when you start to own your, I'm just going to call it own your awesomeness, you project confidence, and you naturally reject negativity that's not constructive. So I love constructive feedback, but I no longer have time for unconstructive negativity, if that makes sense. And the people around me don't give unconstructive negativity, because I don't project a willingness to hear that. But they know that I will absolutely take feedback and would love to hear about things that I can do better, or different directions, or something else I can try. And that's really important to me and my personal development. And it also helps you really focus in terms of how you're moving forward and achieving your goals, because you know the things that you're good at, and you know the things that you're not good at, and you give yourself permission to go and improve where you need to, rather than just beating yourself up about it. So I genuinely mean this. Know that you are amazing. I'm just going to double check. There's no comments. I hope that means that people aren't just really, really bored. Know that you're amazing. Believe in yourself. Only you can do the things that you can do in the way that you do them. And that's incredible, that you are here for a reason and to add value to people. Now I'm getting comments. Let me just double check those. Not bored. So not bored. Excellent. I'm really pleased. So this is, how do you do this though? This is a little bit less tangible. For me, it was an evolution. And so I was consistently monitoring how I show up, how I focus, how I prioritize, revisiting all of these steps, sticking true to your values and dreams. But I would say that it starts with acknowledging that you are great at something and admitting that to yourself. You don't have to, be brave enough to do it to somebody else. You could just write it down secretly in your affirmations book, but you will get braver and more able to do that. We're all busy writing things. Great. Thanks, Mel. So what I did was I wrote it down unapologetically. I had a book at the time. Now I have a journal. It's sitting right in front of me, actually. I did my affirmations before I jumped on here today. And I just gave myself permission to write down the stuff I was great at. And then I asked people, when I went through my branding process earlier this year, my coach had me go and ask people about the things that resonated for them when they thought about me and how I show up and what I do. I have to say, that was such an incredibly affirming process to go through, and I highly recommend it. It was humbling to learn how people think about me and the value that I bring and what they see of me, because you have an impression of yourself and how you show up. But what you don't know is how that shows to other people. And quite often they won't tell you. It's not natural to kind of tell someone what it is that you think that is amazing about them. But they will happily tell you if you ask. So I highly recommend doing that. Don't underestimate the power of what people think in a positive way. So I am saying let go of people's expectations of you in roles, and I am saying acknowledge that people will also always have negative thoughts and criticisms, and that's often a lot more about them than it is about you. But it's okay to embrace the good stuff, and it's really powerful. And so we spend a lot of energy trying not to worry about what people think. As I've said, that is important, but acknowledging sometimes that the people that you value also value you is a massive confidence booster. Think about what ideal looked like to you way back in that first step. So back when we were talking about connect. How do you want to show up? How do you want to look? How do you want to spend your time, add value, live your life? And start doing those things in little ways. That is a massive confidence booster, because you can feel yourself being more authentic to yourself. And it naturally just builds confidence because you know that you're doing the thing you said you were going to do. That was really powerful for me, making those big life decisions and then making choices about, so a really small thing, I'm not a suit wearer and I work in a really corporate environment, and I made the decision that I was going to dress professionally, yes, but I was going to do it in a way that I was really comfortable and stop feeling guilty because I didn't have a suit corporate wardrobe. That is a really small thing that was incredibly affirming to me. Nobody said anything that I wasn't wearing a suit every day because I still looked professional, and that's how I like to project myself. But I had more confidence because I was more comfortable. It's lots of little things like that that make a massive difference to how you're showing up and being true to yourself. Little changes. All the way through this journey of conflicted to confident, it's all about little changes. And I know I talked about a couple of big things. I completely forgot my cup of tea. I know I talked about some big things that Jeff and I did, but that they were absolutely right for us at that point in time in life. And so be brave enough to do big things, but you don't have to do big things to make steps through this journey to build your confidence. The little things are actually the things that make the massive difference for you. So I want you to take a minute and think about how I described myself at the start of this webinar. And I would want you to do that for yourself. So write down your qualities. Write down the things you're amazing at. This plays back to that whole, oftentimes women won't apply for a job because we're not 100% sure that we've got all of the skills that are listed in the job advert, even though we know we could do that job. We're too worried about what people are going to think. Actually write down that stuff that you're great at and start to own it. And I'm going to give you a little challenge. Go and tell a significant person, a friend, your partner, your mum, find someone that you admire and tell them what's amazing about yourself. You can have a laugh. It will be really uncomfortable, but I challenge you to do it. I think actually at the start of this webinar, that is the first time I've described myself like that out loud in quite such a, using as many words as I did to do it. It was kind of weird, but it was kind of cool too, because I actually do believe those things about my skill set now. And telling that to you was a really powerful thing for me to do. So I'm telling you from experience that is really valuable. Thank you, Mel. And I know that lots of people have to go. So I'm going to finish this up for you. Now, I will say, ask for help when you need it. You don't have to do this alone. Practice saying no and flex your confidence muscle and stay connected to yourself. There's lots of stuff that we've talked about today. And those are my top tips for moving through that process. I do also want to say that there's a couple of things that I would love to work through with you on. I'm going to be shooting out an email to the people who registered for the webinar. I'm going to be offering some free calls. So if you would like to work through some of these processes or work through one thing in it that's really challenging for you, grab one of those free coaching calls. I would love to work through with you and help you sort of challenge what some of those blockers are for you. But the other thing that I'm super excited about is I'm going to be running a Conflicted to Confident bootcamp. So if you are excited about joining in and going through, I'll probably do it over 5 days and do a day on each of the steps. And so we'll really dig down deep and use the group and each other to sort of work through some of this stuff. So if you're interested in that, make sure you watch out for that coming through in the emails following this. I would love to work through this with you. Thank you so much for your time today. I know I've gone a little bit over the hour that I said I would, so I've lost a couple of you, but I will be sending the replay out. So if you want to watch through it again and fast forward to bits that were particularly interesting for you, I would love to hear from you feedback and what you got out of this session and what was really valuable for you moving forward. And otherwise, thank you so much for your time. And I look forward to talking to you all really, really soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.